Hopefully you can hear us. Obviously, the surprise this week is that Ryan and I are together.
Yeah, you're not seeing double. We are wearing the same jersey. We are not at our houses. We are one.
It's so this particular weekend we're together in New Jersey because my younger brother, his best friend, is getting married. So we decided to do a live podcast together here in my other brother, Ken's basement. And he set up this wonderful green screen behind us so you can see our logo. And we are
thankful for both of them. You know, Timmy, congrats on the wedding, Timmy and Stacy. You know, big moment in your guys' lives, and thank you again, Kenny, for allowing us this opportunity to be together and do a show together. Finally, we've been doing this since March and we haven't been in the same room. So
yeah,
big steps here at BSing Sports. But enough of the side talk. We're going to get straight into sports, and probably the biggest thing that has happened in sports recently: the Braves pulled up a lot of upsets, won the World Series in 6 games, and Trevor Plouffe called that back in March. Braves versus Astros, Braves in 6. Hit the nail right on the head. I don't know what made him think that, but Bill, what is your take on that?
Yeah, so I mean, Trevor Plouffe hitting that nail on the head. If you put a $1 bet on that back in March, you would have won. I think they said the total was $127,000 on a $1 bet back in March when Trevor Plouffe called it. I think the biggest thing to put together in this is that the Braves won 88 games this season. There were 9 teams that made the playoffs that had more wins than the Braves did. And they turn around and they just handle business.
For a fun fact, there were only 9 other teams in the playoffs. The Braves were actually the worst team in the playoffs according to the World Series or the regular season record.
Correct. So like I said, the Braves with only 88 wins make the playoffs. They played in a bad division where the Phillies finished second with 84 wins.
Yeah, something like that.
But I mean, hats off to the Braves. Congratulations to Freddie Freeman. We'll get into him in a little bit.
I think the biggest surprise for me, sorry to cut you off, about the Braves winning is that their best 2 players, their best pitcher didn't throw a single pitch all year. Mike Soroka tore his Achilles last year. He missed all of this year, despite initial reports saying he's going to come back in July. Braves weren't really in contention, so they held it off another month. Braves still didn't have a grasp on anything, and they just won the World Series without their best pitcher, but by far. Max Fried came in, stepped up. Charlie Morton, we know what happened with him in the World Series. Got 3 outs on a broken leg, which is huge, but he stepped up in the regular season, and they just had contributions from everywhere. And then, of course, Ronald Acuna Jr. tearing his ACL midway through the season, and that was right about the time that Freddie Freeman said, okay, I got to step it up. He took his average from 270 to over 300. He became the Freddie Freeman that we knew, and that's what great players do. When the pressure's on them, they step up and they succeed. And like you said, more about Freddie Freeman later, but the World Series was all about one man.
Jorge Soler, who the Braves acquired at the trade deadline from the Kansas City Royals, unanimous MVP for the World Series, and it's well-deserved. I don't have his statistics right here in front of me. However, I know he hit 4 home runs, and the biggest one was the grand slam in the first inning of Game 6 of the World Series.
Well, and he hit that monster shot. What was that in Houston over the train tracks?
465 feet over the train tracks. Yeah,
the celebration was nuts, dude. He just knew off the bat, and there was so much hype in that dugout.
Absolutely, and I love the way he looked at his teammates in the dugout, and he patted his chest and he said, "I got this. Ride with me. We're going to do this."
Yeah.
I got goosebumps talking about it because I just love sports.
Yeah, no, and the World Series, is probably the most underrated major sporting event, in my opinion. Anything can happen in baseball. Look at it. The worst team, in baseball, they're in the baseball playoffs, managed to make to the World Series.
Yeah.
So, and on any given day, man, and those 7-game series are no joke. Especially, the NFL playoffs are a little bit different because you only play 1 game. But you look at the NHL, you look at the MLB. There's all kinds of upsets all the time, and it can happen. So. Just a wild playoffs in general, and everybody and their mom was against Houston too, outside of Houston. So I think anybody but Houston mentality really worked there.
Yeah, and I mean it's a great win for baseball fans everywhere because, as Ryan pointed out, everybody was against Houston for the cheating allegations. As Ryan pointed out last week, congratulations and hats off to the Astros proving that they could get back to the World Series, and they did everything they could to win that series. But ultimately, the Braves were just the better team. Moving on to that previous conversation of Freddie Freeman here. The Braves have still not signed him. The contract negotiations halted a bit early in the season. Freddie didn't want to think about it, and I mean, it paid off. They won a World Series, but now he's a free agent. And I guess the biggest question on the market right now is: do the Braves re-sign Freddie Freeman?
I'm torn on this because I really want the Phillies to go after Freddie Freeman, and I'll always want the Phillies to go after Freddie Freeman. However, the neutral baseball fan in me thinks that there's no way Freddie Freeman should leave the Braves. He's got to stay with them for life. If he stays with the Braves for life, I'm okay with that. If he goes to any other team besides the Phillies or the Braves, I'll be a little disappointed because that means he definitely had, some intention of leaving. He definitely, was thinking about leaving the organization. So if he is not with the Braves or the Phillies, I'll be upset. But either one of those teams, I think I'll be satisfied.
I would be happy to see Freddie Freeman come to the Braves. I wouldn't want to see him in any other uniform either. I think the biggest thing, and if there is an attempt for the Phillies and Dave Dombrowski to go get him, the biggest thing is the fact that he and Bryce Harper are like best friends. They have a great relationship together.
Bryce gave out that congratulations.
Exactly, that's where I was going. Yeah, on Twitter or Instagram, Bryce Harper said that they're winning the World Series couldn't have happened to a better player in the MLB. He should be the face of baseball at some point. And on some levels, I agree. Mike Trout was hurt most of the season, so I think if you're looking at baseball as a whole, and you're thinking, okay, well, who was the highlight of this season? Who really put everything on their back and was the face of baseball this year? It's got to be Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, I mean, Freddie Freeman, like I said, stepped up huge when Ronald Acuna Jr. got hurt, and that was big for that team. Everybody and their mom counted them out, and then they were buyers at the trade deadline. They didn't acquire any expensive pieces, but then you were just sitting there. They went after Soler and a couple others, and it's like, why are you doing this? Like, you guys are out of contention, But boy, did they prove us wrong in a big way. And speaking of Freddie Freeman, he's 32 years old. So what kind of contract do you think he gets, length, maybe salary-wise?
So if the Braves I really have thought about this a lot, and it depends on who signs him. If he goes to an AL team, obviously they have the DH, and he can hit 300 for most of the rest of his life.
How long do you think that stays, though? I mean,
the NL is probably we're probably getting the universal DH in baseball here in the next couple of years. And that prolongs a lot of guys like Freddie Freeman and JT Realmuto's careers simply on the precedent that they don't have to play in the field every day and they still get to have at-bats. So it really is contingent on that. But if I'm looking at it today and baseball were to stay the same, I think at 32 years old, he could get a 5-year, $85 million deal.
I think he could command a little bit more than that. I'd say he easily makes over $20 million a year. And I agree with 5 years. I think Freddie Freeman being a good hitter, not just reliant on his power, he has the ability to hit to all fields. He's always been a great average hitter. I think that in itself will prolong his career. Stay short of baseball, 2 strikes. You watch this guy hit, it's unbelievable. He puts on a clinic. So I think that Freddie Freeman definitely could get 5 years. And I'm thinking, $110 million. I mean, the market for him is going to be ridiculous. You don't usually see first baseman like this at the market. So
that's true.
And he's left-handed too, so that's a big thing. And he hits lefties very well.
We've had tons of conversations where we hope that the Phillies go and get Freddie Freeman because they need a good first baseman. Another free agent first baseman is Rhys Hoskins on the Phillies. I don't think he likely doesn't make free agency. I think they find a way to keep him.
I was about to say, as long as they tender a qualifying offer, or he's under arbitration, I think, for another year or two. I think he has 2 more years of arbitration.
That might be it, yeah.
So he's not technically a free agent unless the Phillies really just decide to ignore his talks and let him walk. But I think that they bring him back on a cheap arbitration salary. And if possible, they sign Freddie Freeman, and I would totally be okay with Rhys Hoskins, despite being an average at best fielder, moving back to left field. Yeah, if it means we got a first baseman, Gold Glove caliber like Freddie Freeman.
The Phillies did just release. They elected to not pick up the last 2 contracts for Andrew McCutchen and Odubel Herrera. I mean, our loyal viewers know that we are not fans of Odubel Herrera. We've been adamantly against him. He hit 277 this year. He had 18 home runs. He was making a lot of mental errors on the base path, which hurt the Phillies in the long run. You're talking you missed the playoffs by 5 games. You see what the division did. We're being told something. Give us 1 second.
Can you see the chat?
I do have it on my phone.
Okay.
Yeah, Timmy said they need to pay that in. Sorry, technical difficulties. First time we're in a room together. There's a green screen behind us. Kenny's trying to help us out.
Shout out to Kenny again.
But as I was saying, not a fan of Odubel Herrera, but the Phillies were in contention to win this division. They went into Atlanta, and there were 2 very specific base running errors that Odubel Herrera made in that series. He got thrown out at second when he had no shot at stealing second at that point in time. And then it was what should have been double to triple that he hit off the top of the wall that he thought was a home run, and he just didn't run it out. Like, mental errors on Odubel Herrera are absolutely horrendous. So I'm kind of glad they didn't pick up his option.
That's my thing with Odubel Herrera, and it's been my thing for years, is it's never his physical game. You look at his numbers, 277, that's not great, but that's not terrible.
Correct,
you think he'd resign. But he's bad in the field. He came up through the system as a shortstop. He spent 1 year there because in 113 games he made 50 errors. So they moved him to the outfield where it's a little bit easier to play the field, and he still wasn't a very good fielder. Definitely didn't have, any sort of elite level arm strength to play center field. It was average at best. And his speed's not great. The power's there sometimes. The numbers are a little bit, inflating too, because Odell Herrera got off to a great start when they called him back up, and then he just faded out, after the first month really fast. So that 277, for majority of the season was more like 250, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I think in the last month of the season, he hit 194. He was not effective the last month of the season. He was getting platoons for guys like Sebastian Jankowski and
that would be Travis Jankowski.
Travis Jankowski, sorry.
Who actually surprised me. At times he looked pretty good too. So I definitely would keep him on as a fourth, maybe fifth outfielder. I
also like the idea of keeping Brad Miller. He'll demand a little bit more money than those young kids, but I like the idea of keeping Brad Miller on the bench.
Great pinch hitter.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, no. So the Phillies have some work to do in the offseason, and there's a couple of big-name free agents that they could potentially go after with the talks that Didi Gregorius is not locked into the starting shortstop next year.
Correct.
Those two big names being Carlos Correa and Trevor Story. What are the odds you think either one of those end up with the
So here's the biggest thing with the Phillies is Didi Gregorius hitting 198 over the season. He still hit 20 home runs. Or no, he hit 8.
I don't know.
12. I'm sorry.
12, yeah.
He hit 12 home runs. He was injured for a decent part of the season. He hits 12 home runs. He hits 198. Just an absolutely horrendous season.
And it was bad in the field, too. It wasn't great either.
Absolutely horrendous season for Didi Gregorius. And, I mean, the writing was on the wall halfway through the year. They started the season with Nick Matone over there playing, and then they rotated a platoon situation in shortstop, even when Didi was healthy. So I think it's better for the Phillies that they do let Didi Gregorius go. Now, do I think that we have a better shot at Carlos Correa or Trevor Story? I think Story is the better option here. Not money wise, he's gonna demand a ton of money. However, he is unhappy with the situation in Colorado. He's coming off of a pretty decent year. I think he hit 288, 24 home runs, and I think 64 RBIs. 64 RBIs on a team that just did not score runs. The Colorado Rockies were an absolutely horrendous team.
The RBIs are a little bit misleading because, you can look at it and be like, oh, he didn't hit with runners in scoring position, but at the same time, hard to hit with runners in scoring position if there aren't any runners in scoring position.
That's correct, yeah. So I think he gives the Phillies a huge boost. Now we're talking about spending a lot of money. We just said 110 for Freddie Freeman. I'm thinking somewhere around the 130 for Trevor Story. Now Carlos Correa would demand a little bit less money.
I'd say a little bit more. His team was in the World Series and he played absolutely great. He was good in CS. He's a better fielder than Trevor Story is by far. And he's guaranteed to leave Houston. He basically said, this is my last year at the Astros. I want to see what I can do. And I think he marketed himself pretty well. Now he's not as good of a hitter as Trevor Story is.
And that's where I'm at on this.
It could go back and forth. And I think his team going further kind of helps him out a little bit more than Trevor Story because there's no history for Trevor Story in the playoffs. And if you're a competing team, you want to see some history in the playoffs. Trevor Story could end up hitting 100 in the playoffs. And
that's entirely true. I still don't see teams giving Carlos Correa, especially with the stigma that followed him with the Astros, a 5-year, more than $115 million contract. The problem is those Astros guys, they're all plagued by that stigma now.
Yeah, and I think the biggest issue with how much money like these free agents are going to get, like Freddie Freeman, Trevor Story, and Carlos Correa, there might be a lockout this year. The collective bargaining agreement expires in December, I believe.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a very slow offseason potentially, and be prepared to wait around. We might, have a delay into next year. You don't know what's going to happen with these CBAs, and there's definitely going to be disagreements. For years and years, that's the way baseball's been. I don't know if any of you guys know this, but baseball didn't even have a free agency until 1975 when there was a big to do about it. So it's just as recent as the 70s that free agents were even a thing. So there's too many factors in play here for how much money and how long these guys are going to get paid for. So it's kind of a wait and see. But on a normal offseason, I'd say 130 for the shortstops, maybe 140 because it's a little bit more of a prominent position. Whereas, Freddie Freeman, 110, he's a little bit older than those guys are anyway. So that's kind of where I stand on that. But speaking of great players, not free agents, but it's actually heartbreaking. He's killed us so many times in the playoffs, and he's been a great player for over those years. And he actually changed the rules of baseball essentially all by himself by getting plowed over at home plate. Buster Posey, announced his retirement from baseball, which is kind of odd because he had a fantastic season, but he just had a kid during the COVID year, so he sat out last year to take care of his brand new child. So that child would be a little bit over 1 year old now. speculation is that he wants more family time. Bill, what are your thoughts on that?
It's got to be family time. He's only in his 12th career. I know we're referring to him getting run over and tearing his ACL, and it ruined his season. And for a couple of years after that, he didn't really rebound very well. However, this past season, he played the whole season. He had 395 at bats, 304 average. He hit 56 RBIs with 18 home runs.
390 OBP and slugged 500. That's not bad for a catcher. I mean, he played most of the season. He wasn't hurt, but he aged a little bit, and it's hard to keep catchers back there for a lot of games like that. So 400 at bats is probably about what you'd see from him for the rest of his career.
Yeah. So like I said, family time has got to be the case. It's not like he was declining in his ability to do much, because he was still really good at calling games. The Giants won the most games in baseball this season. So Buster Posey was obviously a big part of that. I know they got knocked out of the playoffs, and obviously the Braves won the World Series, as we've discussed. But Buster Posey was a huge part of the Giants doing what they did this year. In addition to that, I think the biggest question here, and Ken Brandt, thanks for throwing in your little top fan situation here. He says Buster to the Hall of Fame. And that's our next debate here is well, there's no debate. We both believe he's a Hall of Famer, but the question here is Buster Posey a first ballot Hall of Famer?
I've said this multiple times on this show. It depends on what day of the week you ask me, but I think more often than not, I'm going to say yes, actually. And I think that's because the standard for catchers to be a first ballot Hall of Famer is a little bit different. I don't think the Hall of Fame voters believe that they should have as long of careers as others. I know guys like Johnny Bench and Yogi Berra played forever, but this isn't that era anymore, So the voters have to adjust as well as, the actual players do.
I think we're still I think we still got 10 years or so before the voters actually make an adjustment. And that's maybe something that the NFLPA has an opportunity to address. I'm sorry, MLBPA has an opportunity to address this offseason. Like Ryan said before, December 10th negotiations start, and there's a very real chance that the baseball negotiations are not squared away by March when spring training is supposed to start. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Now, however, at one-time MVP, back in 2012, it was the year after he tore his ACL. He batted .336 that year, and he was just absolutely lights out. 7-time All-Star in his 12 years, won a Gold Glove, 4-time Silver Slugger, 3-time World Series champ, Rookie of the Year, and he has a batting title, like I said, in the year 2012 when he won the MVP. So he has the accolades to do it, and really the only question mark is, was his career long enough? And that's that's what gets me. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes, he probably is a first ballot Hall of Famer, because with career numbers of 302, 729 RBIs, 372 OBP, and 460 slugging, like his OPS for his career, OPS plus, which is 129, which that means based on ballparks, pitchers you're facing, everything, it's basically one compiled stat to essentially like how good of a hitter are you given the situation that you're in. Because, you look at places like Detroit with Comerica Park and the fences are, 600 feet from the plate. It's not fair to judge everybody the same way. So that's basically what OPS plus is. And they rate 100 as an average player. And he finished with a career OPS plus of 129. So he's definitely above average. And this past year it was 140. So that's kind of where the surprise is that he retired. So it's got to be an internal family issue. He wants to go out on top, and that's fine by me. But I'm going to go ahead and say he gets the nod first ballot. It's going to be real close though, because there are some good players that did not get in.
So that's the thing, is there are some really good players that don't get in, especially first ballot. And that's my reason why he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. I 100% agree that he gets into the Hall of Fame. However, I think it takes 2 years because of the length of time that he played. I remember when this kid came up, he was very young when he played the Phillies in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011 playoffs, and he was just lighting us up the entire time.
Always been a good hitter.
And it was frustrating to watch as a Phillies fan, but you sit back as a sports fan and you're like, man, this kid really has the opportunity to do something. He can definitely make the Hall of Fame one year, but you don't think it's only going to be 12 years. So I think he is a Hall of Famer. I do believe he gets into the Hall of Fame. Those stats and those numbers that you pointed out already are amazing. And you and I kind of looked at this before the podcast began.
And he's caught, 1,095 career games and has 27 pass balls. So let's not sit here and underrate his defense either. 27 pass balls in over 1,000 games. That's nothing's really getting by that. That's called brick wall status for me.
Yeah, so over his entire career, 12 seasons, he catches 1,093 games. He only has 44 total errors and 540 assists behind the plate. These are great numbers to have as a catcher. It's just unfortunate that his career is now over after 12 years. And technically, he only played in 11 seasons because he took the COVID year off.
Yeah. I think that counts 12 years. But he was in the MLB for a span of 13 years.
Yeah,
he just wasn't on the active roster for the 2020 season.
So again, Hall of Famer, absolutely. First ballot, I don't think so.
No, well, I guess we'll find out 5 years from now. But congratulations on a great career, Buster. If you ever give this podcast a listen.
Give us a listen. Give us a like. We're here forever.
The dog.
I'm looking for it. There it is.
Yeah. So anyway, in other baseball news, I know it's been a while since we've talked baseball. Baseball season's over. You think this conversation would be over, but that's not true. Seiya Suzuki available for MLB teams. I wonder what impact does Shohei Ohtani have and his excellence, especially in the first half of this season, have on players coming from Japan to the majors?
So I think it's going to be the opposite of what we would hope. We obviously, like, say a Suzuki could come in and he could be the next Shohei Ohtani. I don't think he's a pitcher. I think he's just a hitter. But I think it's going to be the opposite of what everybody thinks. So not every player that comes from Japan is going to be Shohei Ohtani. You're not going to get that opportunity to have a guy who can hit 44 home runs in the season, 89 RBIs on a bad team, and throw a 3.11, I think, ERA that he had in the AL this year. You're not going to get those guys every single time. So I think other teams are going to go out and they're going to pay for these guys, and it's just not going to be the same production. And they're going to be, for lack of better terms in my brain right this second, they're going to be pissing away money on nothing.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about it. But like I said, congratulations to Shohei in the season that he had, but not every person coming out. Now, I'm not saying Seiya Suzuki isn't going to have a great career. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying where we sit and how the MLB has played. You take chances on Rule 5 drafts. You take chances on these kids out of Korea and Japan, and you're hoping that they're the next great thing. Shohei so far is the next great thing. And it's just a lot of teams are going to start reaching for the next great thing, and it's not going to be good for teams. That's where I'm at.
So speaking of Shohei Ohtani, this is not on the dock, and I know the answer to this question before I ask it. MVP, and if so, unanimous in the AL? Shohei Ohtani?
Not unanimous, yes, MVP.
I'm going to agree with that, and I'm going to even go further and say it's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think. Shohei Ohtani lit the world on fire the first half of the season.
He really cooled off.
As a hitter, he could hit anything, and then he became more so boom or bust. He hit a lot of home runs, but his average took a dip significantly.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., maintained his ability throughout the whole season, and even picked it up a little bit in the second half as the Blue Jays made a playoff run. So I'm going to go ahead and say he does get the nod MVP because he kept the pitching ability up very well, and he didn't sustain any long injuries like he did last year. But I wouldn't be surprised if the voters go ahead and make it a close one. If not, Vlad Jr. wins. But I'm going to go ahead and say Shohei Ohtani wins. But I think it's going to be that close that we shouldn't be surprised.
So in 2006, Albert Pujols came out and said that if your team doesn't make the playoffs, you shouldn't win MVP. So my question is, do the voters make it closer because the Blue Jays were that much closer to making the playoffs than the Angels were? So is it closer strictly on that, or because of all the reasons that you just named, or is there maybe like a half and half situation?
That's a tough one because, yes, the Blue Jays played in a much harder division than the AL West. The AL West had one playoff representative. The AL East, the Sox, the Yankees, and obviously the Rays were all in the playoffs, but the Blue Jays were right there, I
think they only missed the playoffs by 2 games.
Yeah, so while playing in a harder division, they were a better team, and that obviously gives Vlad Jr. some boost. But at the same time, the Blue Jays just have a better team. Hyun-Jin Ryu, pitched lights out most of the season. We didn't even get to see Nate Pearson, who we were both in the beginning of the season very high on. Very, very unfortunate that he got hurt and sent down to the minors. But I'm going to go ahead and say Vlad Jr. Probably had the most impact on that team, so I'd say that give him a boost. But those are the only 2 getting votes for me. It's got to be either Vlad Jr. or Shohei Ohtani.
I'm there with you on that one. So we're gonna get off of baseball. We spent a lot more time on baseball.
Are we gonna talk NL MVP? What about the boy Freeman versus Harper?
I was gonna leave it alone. I thought maybe we'd do a show next week. But all right, let's do it. We're together. Let's fire away. We know the answer, and it's unfortunate because they just won the World Series. Freddie Freeman probably gets the nod for NL MVP. Now, having said that, Bryce Harper's numbers, 100%, the way he carried the Phillies into that contention, should win the MVP. But the voters, and we've already discussed how the voters aren't always taking everything into account, the voters are going to give it to Freddie Freeman because of the World Series title.
think that the exact opposite. So in the rules, it says that the regular season MVP award is given out based on your regular season performance. So while Freddie Freeman, absolutely lit the world on fire in the second half and helped carry that Braves team, he was not the only one. Austin Riley played out of his mind in the second half through the NLDS, and he had help. Max Fried was insane. Charlie Morton pitched very well. So that team had help. But if you look at the Phillies, there were just days where nobody else could do anything right. Aaron Nola was awful. Zach Wheeler was not as good in the second half. Gene Segura was probably steady, but not as good. Rhys Hoskins got injured, missed a lot of the second half. Just these big names on the Phillies just did not produce. But there was one guy that did, night in, night out, and it was Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper literally carried this team, and I don't want to hear anything about how he played one bad series against the Braves. He literally carried this team in the second half to almost making the playoffs for the first time since 2011. So
2011, when the Phillies had the most wins in their franchise at 102. It's been that long. Yes. It's been that long since the Phillies have been in the playoffs, and it was right after a season where they won 102 games. And actually, if you remember that season correctly, they beat the Braves to let the Cardinals into the playoffs the last game of the season, and the Cardinals are the one who knocked them out.
And the Cardinals won the World Series that year. So
Correct.
They lost to the best team in 5 games in a best-of-5 series. And I always come back to that series, and I think about, that was the last great outing in a Phillies uniform for Roy Halladay.
Indeed.
Because in 2012, he was average at best. He had a mid-4s ERA. And then in 2013, the last season of his career when the back injuries started finally catching up to him, he was not good. And that leads me to my next question.
Hold on, before you do that. I do want to comment. I know you guys can't see our comments right now. We're doing this whole different thing here. Ken Brandt said the only other one was Hoskins. She's talking about production before Hoskins got hurt. That's a very, very good point because Hoskins was delivering.
Yes, he was producing when he was healthy. However, he was not healthy for a large portion of it. So.
And as a result, the Phillies finished with 83 or 84 wins, and they missed the playoffs. You don't know what could have happened. Again, the Braves only had 88 wins, and they make it to the playoffs, and they win the World Series. So you never know.
Worst division in baseball. Well,
Hoskins stays healthy. You don't know what happens there. And but yes, to your point, Hoskins was delivering. He got injured. It's very unfortunate. The team was significantly better with Hoskins in the lineup. So I think if it's up to the voter, all the stuff that you just said, I agree with you, and I think that Harper should win the MVP. I just think it goes to Freddie because of the pedigree behind it. Also, we're not convinced. So Harper is in Philly for the next 12 years, 10 years. We know that Harper's a Philly. He could win an MVP as a Philly in the next 10 years. We don't know that Freeman is a Brave after this season. I think maybe
he already has one as a Brave.
He does. He has one last year. It doesn't mean he doesn't get it back-to-back. He could be one of the ones with back-to-back. We kind of discussed the Hoskins thing, Dad, with whether they resign him or not. We said that they probably do the arbitration with him and bring him back.
It'll be cheaper that way. I don't think he gets any kind of long-term contract extension only because he still does have issues with consistency.
Correct.
He will go very hot and then very cold.
He's a guy who hits 4 or 5 home runs in a week span and then doesn't get a hit for 33 straight at bats. And I'm saying that specifically on this season because it happened.
Yeah, so anything can happen with Rhys Hoskins, and I think they just go ahead and take the arbitration salary. Plus, that leaves them room to sign guys like Freddie Freeman. Anyhow, this leads me to a question that I have been wanting to ask for some time now. Who is the most impactful athlete in Philadelphia on a fan base and an organization as a whole that you have seen?
You're going to laugh at my answer because it's not even in Philadelphia anymore. Right this second, it is Carson Wentz. The way the media continues to follow Carson Wentz in Indianapolis, I know it's a big deal because we get the draft pick if he finishes 70% or 75% or whatever the stats are. We're not going to get into that specifically. But it's Carson Wentz. The way the media still beats him up when he does poorly in Indianapolis. Yeah. The way the media ripped him apart last year. But look at what he's doing in Indianapolis. That's a good Indianapolis team. It's taken some growing pains, but they're 4-5 right now. He's thrown multiple touchdowns and 0 interceptions in 7 straight games this season. Everybody blamed Carson Wentz last year for the issues.
I think it's 6 games as a whole this year because I know he was picked off twice against Tennessee last week.
That is correct. You're right. Thank you, Timmy, for giving me the stats. 17 touchdowns this season versus 3 interceptions. He's got a 69% completion percentage.
This is to, once again, garbage receivers, which we've heard a lot in his career.
As Eagles fans, we know. So I think the most impactful person in the past 5-10 years in Philadelphia sports is Carson Wentz, because what's Jalen Hurts doing for us right now?
I just meant like your whole life. You pick Wentz over somebody like Dawkins.
Oh goodness, no! I thought you were talking to me specifically the last couple years.
No, since you've been alive, what is the most impactful, negative or positive? Since you brought up a negatively impactful person, negative or positive, most impactful on the fan base as an organization as a whole that you've been alive? Philadelphia athlete.
I do love Doc, but I'm not going to go Doc. I'm going to go Chase Utley.
I'm also picking in Philly.
Okay. So you're probably picking the shortstop there.
Nope.
Oh, okay, fine. So you're going to take the one that went to Washington?
Nope.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I'm going Chase Utley. Since I've been alive, there has not been a harder player for Philadelphia sports in all of it since I've been alive than Chase Utley. Every play he hustled, he dealt with the knee injuries later in his career, and he was trying to do too much once Howard was gone and Rollins was no longer performing. But for me, I'm going to go biggest impact is Chase Utley. I mean, one of the best things I've ever seen in my entire life from a play is Game 5 of the World Series, where he fakes the throw to first base and then throws it home and guns the guy out and keeps it a 3-3 game there in the 8th inning. That play,
one in the bottom of the 8th, and Lids shut it down in the 9th.
There it is. So that play right there for me, goosebumps talking about it. Seriously,
I see it.
That play for me, yeah, it's here. I can feel it. I get so emotional talking about this stuff. And so that for me is Chase Utley is the most impactful Philadelphia Philly that I've had the pleasure of watching myself.
So mine's an interesting choice, and it's an interesting choice. I'm choosing it because it's an interesting choice. There has not been a single, not Dawkins, not Wentz, not more impactful Philadelphia athlete than Roy Halladay. And I'll say this: how many Philadelphia athletes have played 4 years here, where half of them they sucked? Excuse me, but he was terrible, and he has a statue with his number at the stadium. He has his number retired by the team where half the years he was there sucked. Carson Wentz just had 3 great years, 1 bad one. Yeah. And, we ran him out of town. Roy Halladay was terrible his last 2 years here, but yet the dude's on a throne like a god here. Like if he was still alive, he'd never pay for another meal here.
Here's my question on that. I agree with you. However, he doesn't throw the perfect game. He doesn't throw the no-hitter in the playoffs. Do you still feel the same way about Roy Halladay?
But he did. That's an impossible question.
It's not I want you to try and look at it as a whole perspective in that scenario. He doesn't do those 2 things. Do you feel the same way? Because the reason he's idolized in Philadelphia is because he was perfect at one point.
Does he finish with the same numbers, the Cy Young year in 2010?
Let's say yes.
Does he finish as the runner-up, which should have been Cy Young? Kershaw beat him out for it in 2011. Does he finish with those same exact numbers?
Let's say yes.
Then yes.
Okay.
Because at one point they had 3 other considered aces on their squad, and none of them were close to Roy Halladay. Not a single one.
July 2011.
How impactful does your fan base have to be in the Hall of Fame voting to where you were the number 1 player at your position for 8 years with a different organization as he was with the Blue Jays, and yet you get retired into the Hall of Fame with no team on your cap? Because the Phillies fan base pushed for it, because the Phillies organization still supports him. Think about it. He was here 4 years and he was bad for 2 of them. How much more impactful do you have to be?
That's a really good point. I like your argument. That's good.
2011, even his last great start was a great start. 8 innings, 126 pitches, 11 strikeouts, gave up that run in the first inning because of a triple and a double by Schumacher and Rafael Furcal. Yeah, so, he gave up 1 run in the first inning and then balled out against his former teammate, Chris Carpenter. They're both teammates in Toronto. Mm-hmm. I think it speaks for itself that you can be here for 4 years, suck for 2 of them, and you have 34 retired by the organization, 34 as a statue, in the stadium. They just do so much for Roy Halladay when, in theory, did he really do that much for the organization? I would say proportionally no. Chase Utley did more for the organization. You don't have his number, out there. His number isn't retired by the Phillies.
That's a really good point.
So I'm going to go ahead and say impactful on the organization, Roy Halladay.
By that argument, you could add Nick Foles to that.
That's true.
You absolutely could add Nick Foles to that argument. First Super Bowl.
He's
got a statue outside.
Roy Halladay didn't even win a World Series.
That's correct.
One
You're right.
playoff series here, and
you're entirely correct. So I do agree with your assessment there that he probably does get the nod for most impactful in that scenario. But like I said, you could definitely bring up Nick Foles.
Yeah.
I mean, for those of you who don't remember, Nick Foles did not play well at the end of that season after Carson Wentz got hurt. He did not play well.
Going into the playoffs, it's terrible.
They sneak out a win against the Rams after Wentz gets hurt. They sneak out a win against the Raiders on Christmas.
And then they lost to the Cowboys to end the season.
They lose to the he does come out and beat the Giants, and then but a close game against the Giants, and then he goes. He doesn't even play. They play Nate Sudfeld or whoever was the third string at the time. I think it was Sudfeld.
And they lost 6-0 against the Cowboys.
They lose 6-0 to the Cowboys, just to show you how good the defense was. Our backups were in, and they lose 6-0 to the Cowboys.
I think that was more so the team having momentum rather than being good, because even the backups.
But that Falcons game, let's talk about that. They were the 1 seed. They got very lucky. They managed to maintain the 1 seed. They get into the division. Then they get the Falcons. That was a sloppy game. You're talking. He throws a pick right there before halftime. If Keanu Neal doesn't knee it off of a knee pad, and then Torrey Smith in the right spot at the right time catches the ball, gets a first down, they kick a field goal, and they go up by 1 point at that point. They never relinquish the lead after that. But you're talking, that's an interception. Nick Foles did not play well in that game, and then out of nowhere is the Vikings game. And it was legitimately
lights out.
It was legitimately out of nowhere the Vikings game. And for the first quarter of that game, he didn't play well.
No,
it was
bad. The interception by Patrick Robinson for a touchdown.
And
turned that whole game around.
That's exactly right. So he doesn't play well for the first half of that Vikings game.
It's funny because
and then they put up 44 points in 3 quarters.
I think it was 38.
38 points in 3 quarters.
Yeah, so it's funny because if you look at the next year, what happened to the Vikings against the Eagles happened to the Eagles against the Saints. Eagles are up 14-0 against the Saints and driving deep in their territory, and Foles throws the interception on the ball for Zach Ertz, and it totally flipped the game. And
let's not forget that Nick Foles had him in a position to try and get down and score, and Alshon Jeffrey lets that ball go through his hands on a ball that he caught 100 times in the regular season.
Do you, looking back on it, without the result being in play, do you agree with Doug Peterson running a play before the 2-minute warning there?
No.
I think given that it wasn't third down, I agree with that.
So when it happened, I thought to myself, why is he rushing to the line? What are they doing? And then Nick Foles throws the interception.
Yeah, I think they should have let the clock hit the 2 minutes there.
Come up with a better game plan.
I think it was 2nd and 9. And they should have just run the ball coming out of the 2-minute warning. Get the clock down, because even if you get the first down and score that, you're scoring a little bit too quickly. You forget
Drew Brees is still on the field.
Drew Brees is still on the other side, other sideline. And this was back in 2018. This isn't 2020 Drew Brees. This is 2018 Drew Brees. So I don't know that I necessarily agreed with that there, but that was Doug's MO the entire time he was here. He was very aggressive. Most fourth down go for it's in the NFL while he was there. So it. Look, I don't think that was the time to be aggressive.
He gets run out of town too for bad play calling in the whole 4-11 in 1 situation. I don't think it was well deserved. I thought even if Wentz was gone, Doug Peterson deserved another season here. And right now, Nick Sirianni is not proving me wrong on that emotion at all.
I think given his personnel choices, it was time to move on from him too. He wanted to promote Press Taylor, who had just, essentially quarterbacked. Keep in mind that the previous seasons,
Howie Roseman and Jeff Lurie told him who his staff had to be. So I can understand him going in there and being like, well, if you're going to tell me who I have to be, I'm just going to tell you the guys on my roster, I'd like to promote them. That's my attitude on it. Which is unfortunate that it ended up coming down to that.
But why would you promote a guy who just, so to speak, quarterbacked one of the worst quarterbacking seasons ever, or one of the worst regressions ever?
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, so I think that's part of what got Doug fired. That's a big reason. Why would you promote Press Taylor at offensive coordinator if he can't even handle the quarterback position right?
Fair enough. Yeah, Kenny, we can give that a run if you'd like to. Just make it something that we could probably come up with the top of our heads, because we don't have our laptops with us. We're going to move on to hockey. We spent a lot of time on baseball. We're kind of already touched on football. We'll come back to it. We're going to move to hockey really quick. The NHL.
Jack Eichel sent to Vegas for a first, a second, Alex Tuck, and another player. Vegas got him for chump change, but that's how desperately Buffalo and Jack Eichel wanted to part ways. I think this is probably the best trade that was available for both teams given the situation. However, I don't know when Eichel plays because he is still wanting to get surgery on his neck. He might be out for the remainder of this year. He might be out for some time this year and come back. Who knows? But either way, I think this is a big win for Vegas because you get a big-time player who, granted, is on a big-time contract. But if you got the room for it, so be it. This is one of those moves that if Eichel were to play today, Vegas immediately becomes, up there with Colorado in terms of where they stand in the West as cup contenders. So what are your thoughts on this trade?
You already pointed out everything that I was going to say about it. It's the only trade available that was a win for both teams. He wasn't going to play for Buffalo. He was definitely going to get the neck surgery. He was going to find a way to drag out his next couple seasons.
Yeah.
He wants to play hockey. He deserves to play hockey. He's a heck of a player.
He's only 22 years
23 years
23?
old. 23 years old, Jack Eichel. And like I said, he's a heck of a hockey player. Vegas gets a huge steal here.
Yeah, but I think Buffalo just let this relationship go too sour for too long. Had they done him last year, they could have gotten 3 firsts and a decent player for him.
I agree, and maybe he could, if they had said that they were actively trading him last year, which I don't think they were doing, he may have wanted to play to up his stock.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case. I mean, and it is what it is. But I like the trade. Excuse me, sorry, I'm burping a little bit. I like the trade, and like you said, it was the best trade on the table for both teams in that scenario. Sticking with the NHL really quick, we're going to talk about the Flyers. They're 5-2-2. They lose in overtime last night to the Penguins, who are a significantly worse team than them right now.
Especially with their 4 best players out. You know, Crosby and Malkin did not play in that game. I didn't hear Letang's name either, but
Letang was on the ice.
Was he? Oh
yes.
Yeah, he was. I remember him being on the ice.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I watched the game on a low volume. We were out.
So let's talk about the re-emergence of Carter Hart. Let's talk about how he's obviously re-emerging because the defense in front of him is better.
Even without Ryan Ellis to this point, he's got a nagging lower body injury. His timetable for coming back is more so week to week.
Yes, but let's start with Carter Hart, and then we'll go into the more physicality stuff, which I love seeing from the hockey or from our Flyers is physical play. So this time last year, I was really questioning Carter Hart as our goalie. I know it was really early in the season, and you told me to calm down, pump my brakes. It's really early in the season, and we'll get back to it. But Carter Hart struggled last year. There's no getting around it. Carter Hart struggled.
Not all his fault.
And I back that up 100%. Not all his fault. Defense was absolutely horrendous in front of him. I'm super happy Ghost is gone. So this year, he looks significantly better. So yes, they lose to the Penguins last night. They put up 48 shots. Jari saves 46 of them. I mean, Jari was playing out of his mind last night, so they end up losing 3-2 in overtime. But Carter Hart saved 38 shots last night as well. It's unfortunate that the overtime goal was like something that he probably could have saved, should have saved. But I'm just excited with what I've seen from Carter Hart so far. Not to mention our backup in Jonesy has looked really solid too.
Jones has been solid. I think he's 2-0.
2-1. 2-0-1.
2-0-1.
2-0-1.
No, because Carter Hart has both overtime losses, and I distinctly remember that because he just got the overtime loss last night, where he allowed a very soft.
Okay, so it's 2-1. Yeah,
very soft goal in overtime. That as great as he played the whole rest of the game, and granted, without him, that game would not have gone to overtime. Yeah. That this is my biggest issue with Carter Hart, and it's still pretty prominent this year, is these soft goals have to go. There is no way that wraparound goal should be going in. You've got to know where your pipes are. And the previous overtime loss for him, he allowed 2 goals in the second period that were very soft. One of them came straight off the boards behind the net, and then he kicked it in himself, essentially. How are you not covering that post? He seems to lack post awareness sometimes, and that's kind of my about him. But
also
all in all, he's played better this year.
Also, you and I discussed this a little bit last night while we were hanging out. His puck handling, every time he comes out of the net, I get terrified every time he comes out of the net. His puck handling, passing to his teammates is not great, and I feel like a lot of times he just makes the wrong decision, and then somebody bails him out. Personally, I would rather him just like stay in the net and let one of the defensemen play the puck. In case you're wondering, I have my phone here where Ryan's looking. One of our viewers is asking us a trivia question, and the trivia question is as follows. Which of these Yankee baseball greats set a Major League world record for having 40 RBIs in World Series play? Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, or Joe DiMaggio?
Iron Horse.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Gehrig.
I'm 40 RBIs in World Series play. Who played in the most?
It's either Joe or Lou Gehrig. Those are my.
Yeah. I'm going Yogi Berra on this one.
You're going Yogi?
I'm going Yogi on this one.
Oh, wait. Is this like overall in a career?
Overall in a career.
Okay,
I'm going Yogi. It was Mantle. All right, apologies. We were both wrong.
Wow.
Okay. Now, listen, I'm not putting Mickey Mantle's career down. It was obviously shortened because he had a lot of health issues because he didn't really take care of himself. But I did not realize that he was in enough World Series to hit 40 RBIs.
Dude was a beast.
The year Maris hit 61, he didn't even play in the World Series.
We just pumped the Braves up, so pardon me, Chipper Jones fans, but best switch hitter of all time.
I agree, best switch hitter of all time.
60s and 70s, and he hit 536 home runs. Come on.
No, you're right. So it was not Berra. The answer is Mickey Mantle. Thank you, Ken, for that question. It was a really good question.
But Yeah, so back to hockey, the Flyers, notorious for playing soft and poor on the West Coast, come out, 2-1, and in the last game against Calgary, which is a very good team anyway, they looked like that they had been traveling out to the West Coast. They looked like they'd been on the road for 3 days, on the wrong coast. And that's when it all caught up to them. However, to go ahead into Edmonton and Vancouver and win those games, especially against Edmonton and their high-powered offense with Draisaitl and McDavid, I'm gonna say that was a win for them. If they can go out there and do it again, which they will have to eventually. To 2-1, that gives me hope. That they can travel out west and win those games. So I think they went 1-6-1 on their road trip last year out west.
That is correct. Yeah, and Calgary, we went into that game with the same record, 5-1-1 apiece, and Calgary just gave it to the Flyers. And really, they only gave it to them in the last 10 minutes of the second period. Other than that, the game was really close.
Yeah, the fatigue caught up to them at that point. So while I'm not going to say that that's an excuse, it's kind of something that you understand in the regular season anyway. We'll go ahead and give them a pass for that one. But 5-2-2 over a stretch of 9 games. I will take that every 9 games over the season because that wins us a lot of hockey. So,
all right. So we had a couple of other things on the docket. I think we're going to nix this. We can do that another week. Yeah.
No, I want
just timing. No. Okay.
No.
All right. That's fair enough. All right. So we're going to move to football. We were going to do what we have been doing the last couple of weeks and just give you our predictions for this week. But before we do that, we want to move into actual playoff teams as it stands right now and who we think are actual Super Bowl contenders. So if the playoffs started today in the NL,
or in the NFC.
Well, actually, it doesn't even matter because you're going to give me both. In the AFC, the Titans would be the 1 seed. Vegas would be the 2 seed. Baltimore 3, Buffalo 4, Cincinnati 5, Pittsburgh 6, and the Chargers, both of those last 2 teams at 4 and 3 apiece, would be the rounding out the playoffs there in the AFC. And in the NFC, in order from 1 to 7, it would be the Packers at 7-1, Arizona 7-1, Dallas 6-1, Tampa 6-2, LA Rams at 7-1, New Orleans 5-2, and Carolina 4-4. So actual Super Bowl contenders for me are the Packers, the Cardinals, the Rams, the Buccaneers, obviously, all from the NFC. And for the AFC, it's Buffalo, Baltimore, and I would even give Tennessee a nod here for possible Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, I agree that there's more in the NFC than there are in the AFC. And notice we didn't say the Kansas City Chiefs. They just look too lost, too far into the season. Granted, there's still 9 games to play on their schedule, but they just look too lost right now for me to commit them as a Super Bowl contender. I imagine they will bump up into the playoff contention. At some point, they probably will be a playoff team. I can't imagine that Pittsburgh stays there, so I could see 3, West teams being in the playoffs. But I could see the Chargers actually overthrowing Vegas for the top seed in the West.
I think it could happen in the next couple of weeks, yeah.
But anyway, moving on to that, I would agree with that assessment in the AFC. In the NFC, however, I think you left off a very important team. You left off the Dallas Cowboys as a Super Bowl contender. They lost on opening night to, of the football season to Tampa Bay. They wildly outplayed the Bucs as the Bucs had 4 turnovers and Dallas still found a way to lose that game. And they won 6 straight since. So why'd you leave them off the list?
For exactly what you just said. Against a good team, they get 4 turnovers and they still find a way to lose. So you go into the playoffs, you're playing good teams. You take the ball away, that's wonderful. Diggs is playing out of his
Trayvon Diggs is
playing out of his mind right now.
Yeah.
And kudos to him and kudos to the Cowboys because they are playing good ball. And I've said this several times. They obviously win the East. There's no shot at the Eagles, Washington football team, or the Giants catching them. But because against teams like the Buccaneers and good teams, you go in and you play a really good, hard-fought game. You take care of the football. You get turnovers, and you still find a way to lose the game. That's all the playoffs is finding ways to win games against good teams, and they haven't shown to me that they can do that yet. Okay. Now, I know that's been the stigma on Dak his entire career. I'm not saying it's entirely on Dak. You and I have been very adamant that the quarterback position does not win and lose football games by themselves, and I stand by that. But as a unit, the Cowboys went to Tampa week 1, played a great football game, almost flawless, and still lost.
That was my exact reason too. I was going to leave them off the list because until they beat a good team, specifically on the road, and that, like I said, they outplayed them and still lost. If they outplay them and win, or if they get outplayed and win, if they're on the flip side of that, then I will count them as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. But until then, they are not to me. Now, with the way that the seeding's laid out, Green Bay has the bye. Arizona would be at home to Carolina. Dallas would face New Orleans, and Tampa would be at home to the Rams. Which of those matchups do you find the most intriguing? And is there a potential upset?
So the upset, and I think you and I are thinking of the same one, is the Rams going to Tampa. Yeah. I do not believe that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can line up especially now that the Rams have Von Miller on the defensive side of the ball. That team, I think that's an underrated trade. It kind of went like not under the radar. It was like big news in the NFL the other day when it happened. But Von Miller to the Rams is a huge deal. You put him on the defensive line with Aaron Donald. Who is stopping them?
Yeah, who are you going to double team? You only pick one.
That's right. So who is stopping that team up there? So if the playoffs started today, the Rams are my team. If the playoffs started today, the Rams are my team.
Now, let me ask you this, because I'm in belief the Rams are going to end up winning the NFC West. I don't know if you are. Let's flip-flop Arizona and the Rams. So Arizona has to go to Tampa. How does that matchup look?
Tampa wins.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
So Tampa or Arizona definitely beats New Orleans, in my opinion, in Arizona.
Yeah.
The Rams.
Well, they play Carolina. They play Carolina.
I'm sorry. Arizona definitely beats Carolina in Arizona. The Rams go to Tampa and win, and then Dallas probably beats New Orleans. I think that's a closer game than people would give it credit for. But Dallas probably beats New Orleans, especially now that Jameis Winston is injured. So you got to take that into account looking into it.
Yeah, but they went 3-1 with Taysom Hill last year.
They did go 3-1 with Taysom Hill last year. Who did they lose to?
It wasn't Bucks. It was
the Eagles.
Yeah, it was the
Eagles.
Yeah, it was the Eagles.
The Jalen Hurts led Eagles at that. Anyway, moving past that. So Dallas probably beats New Orleans. So the next matchup would obviously be Arizona and the Rams, and I don't think that Arizona beats the Rams.
No, not twice, especially not in the fashion that they did. Good teams, good head coaches find a way to rebound and adjust. Look at last year with Tampa versus New Orleans. New Orleans clobbered Tampa.
I apologize. That would be wrong anyway because it would be the Rams going to the Packers. I apologize. I messed that one up already.
That would be a good game, and I'm still picking the Rams. Jalen.
You think the Rams go to Lambeau during snow season and upset Aaron Rodgers?
It depends on what Matt LaFleur does with Devontae Adams, because Jalen Ramsey does not follow to the slot. So if they stick Devontae Adams in the slot and torture the defense that way, yeah, go ahead. But it'd be a lot closer of a game. However, Matt Stafford's he was in Detroit for how many years? So he played Green Bay once in their stadium. How many years? So it's
That's a good point. That's
not something
point.
He's unfamiliar with. So go ahead and give me the Rams in that matchup. I think it could be closer depending on personnel matchups, like I just said. But I think the Rams come out of the NFC here. Like, regardless of what happens, I think just from top to bottom, they got a great coach. They have a quarterback who's playing out of his mind right now. Two very good receivers. Cooper Kupp is off this planet right now. Darrell Henderson even looks good in that offense. So, and like you said, the addition of Von Miller, Aaron Donald on the line. You got Jalen Ramsey still in that secondary. Go ahead and give me the Rams. Top to bottom, they're the best team.
I'm going to agree with that. Like I said, if the playoffs started today, it's the Rams.
All right, so we got the Rams over in the NFC. AFC's a little bit murkier because the top seed actually just changed hands this past week, with Cincinnati getting upset by the Jets in a big way, and Tennessee pulling out a come from behind win against the Colts. They're now the number 1 seed. My question to you is, because there's something that immediately jumps off the page, which one of these seeds is smoke and mirrors?
It's Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is definitely the smoke and mirror. Well, you know what? I actually have a second one, but let's start with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh in 4-3. Ben Roethlisberger's washed up. We've talked about it several times on the show in the past couple of weeks. He's finding ways to win games. They've won 3 in a row. Good for the Steelers. But Big Ben is, if you guys are watching these games, he's just not mobile anymore. And if he's not getting the ball out of his hands in 3 steps, he's getting hit. And it's just not the same Ben Roethlisberger as it was 10 years ago. So the Chiefs probably take that spot.
I could see Cleveland doing it too.
I could also see Indianapolis doing it.
Yeah, Cleveland, Indianapolis, Kansas City are out of contention right now, but I think those are 3 teams we agree could definitely end up taking one of those spots.
So that's my number 1 smoke and mirrors team. The other one is the 2 seed Las Vegas Raiders. They played very well. I'm not putting anything past them. They smoked the Eagles 2 weeks ago. Made the Eagles look like a JV squad out there. But the Chargers are the better team in that division, in my opinion. So the longer the season plays out, I think you're going to see it. The Chargers probably take the 1 seed this year. Vegas and Chiefs round out the wild card. But if you're asking me who wins all the way through the playoffs, it's got to be Baltimore or Buffalo, in my opinion, regardless of the matchups where they land. Tennessee Tennessee won't beat Buffalo for a second time this season. In my opinion, obviously. I'm not a predictor of like knowing everything. But Tennessee's not going to beat Buffalo a second time this season. So if I'm looking at it, I'm saying probably, I'm going Buffalo this year. I'm going Buffalo out of the AFC.
So with the way that these matchups line up now, Buffalo is slated to face Cincinnati in Buffalo, where Cincinnati just beat them. if I'm not mistaken. I believe that game was in Buffalo.
Correct.
Yeah. Does that happen again if they go to the playoffs?
Not. Absolutely not.
You don't think so?
Not even a little bit.
Not even
there are zero parts of me.
I agree with that statement only because I think Cincinnati is my second smoke and mirrors.
Cincinnati
team.
did not beat Buffalo in Buffalo. Buffalo's 2 losses are Tennessee and the Steelers.
I believe. Oh, I thought Cincinnati beat Baltimore. That's what it. Yeah, they just
Cincinnati beat Baltimore.
Yeah, Baltimore.
In Baltimore. Yeah.
Okay, so looking at the way these standings line up, Tennessee appears to be the number 1 seed because they played an extra game over the following 3 teams behind them.
Correct. Yeah.
I kind of agree. Buffalo, I think, takes the top seed here. Although Tennessee, I would not be shocked, and this is going to sound crazy, if Tennessee does not make the playoffs. Derrick Henry is gone for the year. He's not coming back. The Colts are playing good football.
I was about to say, the Colts are playing good football.
Outside of that horrendous loss that they just had, the Colts are playing good football. If they overthrow Tennessee in that division, Tennessee does not make the playoffs because there will be 3 teams going to the playoffs coming out of the AFC West.
I agree with that. I agree with that statement.
I think Vegas ends up being the 3rd team. I think Kansas City eventually catches them. Andy Reid is too good of a coach. Patrick Mahomes is too good of a quarterback, and they have too good of a team to keep, playing this back and forth football. Cleveland is another potential that could jump in there, depending on if they level out or not with this OBJ situation. We'll get into that in a little bit. And like you said, Indianapolis, I wholeheartedly believe that with Julio Jones being in and out of the lineup, A.J. Brown is still in and out of the lineup. He's questionable Sunday. Tannehill can't do this all by himself. We have no proof that Jeremy McNichols or Adrian Peterson can come back to form. It wouldn't shock me if Tennessee is an 8-win, miss the playoffs, even at 6-2 right now.
I'd say they probably get the 9 wins, but I could definitely see them missing the playoffs here.
Yeah, if the Colts win 10 games, they'll be out of the playoffs. The Colts could very well win 10 games.
And I'm with you. I do agree with that assessment.
So with the AFC is just too unpredictable right now. But yeah, my first smoke and mirrors team is Pittsburgh. Second for me is Cincinnati, and then third is Las Vegas. I think Cincinnati got a little bit of help there. They're a little bit of momentum. They're a little bit of a young team for me still. Jamar Chase is a rookie. He's lit the world on fire. Looks like Justin Jefferson did last year, which is fine. But, Joe Burrow's still a young quarterback coming off an injury. We're only at the halfway point of the season. So let's see what this team can do in the second half. But if they miss the playoffs to a team like Cleveland, if Cleveland comes in and beats them one Sunday, I think that they take that spot from them. So it depends on what happens a lot with Sunday, because I believe Joe Burrow's never beaten Cleveland, actually. Fun fact. So
that is a true statement.
So it's interesting. But out of the AFC, go ahead and give me the Bills. They probably have the most stable floor. So we're looking at Bills. What do we say in the AFC? Rams?
Bills, Rams, yeah. I'd watch that.
Who wins it?
You got to give me the Rams on that one. I love the Bills. I'm a huge Josh Allen fan. But if you're looking at a more perfectly rounded team, it's definitely the Rams. The Bills defense is good. I'm not taking anything away from the defense, but as I mentioned, Von Miller goes to the Rams. So they got Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey on that defense. So they're really well rounded out there. You've got Matt Stafford playing out of his mind at quarterback, all the weapons at wide receiver, not to mention their running back, Darrell Henderson, is doing absolutely fantastic this season. So for me, it's the Rams over the Bills. And again, I said it. I love the Bills, but it's the Rams. I'm
50% saying this because you said the Rams. I'm 50% saying this because I believe it. I think the Bills have a chance here. The Bills have a very stout run defense. I think they're third in the league in rushing yards allowed per game or something like that.
It's fun fact for the Bills is they are the first in scoring offense and the first in scoring defense through week 9.
The defense is stout. Tre'Davious White would probably follow Robert Woods all over the field, but Cooper Kupp's been the better receiver anyway. I know he's out of the slot, which is why I say White would follow Woods. Mm-hmm. Stafford's played great. Higbee has been non-existent in that offense at this point, which surprises me because even you said that Stafford's biggest, weapons was his tight ends. So go ahead and give me the Bills. I think Josh Allen is too electrifying. I think Stephon Diggs does figure it out, even with Jalen Ramsey on the shadow. Go ahead and give me the Bills, but it's going to be – both teams are going to score into the 30s. It's not going to be like the last time the Rams were in the Super Bowl.
Water. Please, thank you. It's hot, dude.
Yeah. We should go ahead and run down the schedule here.
That's fine. All right, so what we're going to move into next is we're going to run through the predictions that we've been doing the last couple of weeks. So week 1, as we've already, so we talked about the Bills a little bit here in the in the Super Bowl. We got Buffalo visiting Jacksonville, a 1:00 game. I don't think there's really anything that needs to be discussed too much in this game. Trevor Lawrence is still trying to find his way in the NFL. Josh Allen is an electric quarterback, as Ryan pointed out a few moments ago. So I've got Buffalo here, and I got them winning probably by 14 to 21 points. I don't think it's going to be a close game at all. So like I said, I don't really think we need to have too much to discuss on that front. Next game on the docket is Atlanta, who has been playing better. Atlanta's actually come out and won some games. Matt Ryan has looked pretty good. They're finally getting Kyle Pitts into the game plan. Carterell Patterson as a cheat code at quote-unquote running back, because he's technically a wide receiver playing running back at this point. And they're visiting the New Orleans Saints, who are now – we're not even sure if Trevor Siemian or Taysom Hill is going to be the quarterback, but Siemian did play well against a good Buccaneers defense the other day. And seeing as that Siemian did play well against the Buccaneers defense the other day, and the game is in New Orleans, I'm going to go with New Orleans regardless of whether Taysom Hill or Trevor Siemian get the start. I think Sean Payton finds a way to get Alvin Kamara started. He's had a very down year because Jameis Winston does not check the ball down. He just is a running gun. Taysom Hill doesn't either, but if Siemian is the starting quarterback, they find a way to get Kamara involved, and I think New Orleans wins game two, or wins that matchup.
Which matchups have you got?
Just the first two.
Okay, cool. Buffalo,
I'm going to do what you did.
That's another matchup. All right, moving on. My opinion on Atlanta, New Orleans, because it's in New Orleans. I believe Trevor Siemian was announced the starter on Sunday. I don't think Taysom Hill is quite ready to come back from his concussion, if I'm not mistaken. However, go ahead and give me Atlanta here on the road, because division games are wacky, and New Orleans, I think they're a little bit lost right now. You know, Michael Thomas just admitted he's going to be out for the year. We don't really know what to expect from Trevor Siemian. You know, there's a reason he's been a backup for a couple of years now. I forgot he was actually in the league, to be honest. And Atlanta's just playing good football even without Calvin Ridley. You know, that loss hurts them for sure, but he hasn't played. He hasn't really been right all season. You know, he hasn't been as involved as we would like Calvin Ridley to be. Correa Patterson has played out of his mind this year. Matt Ryan's actually playing very well, you know, better than I thought he would. Maybe Atlanta holds off on drafting a quarterback for another couple of years, but go ahead and give me the Falcons on the road here. You know, I like to see upsets happen. I like to see road teams win, and I believe Atlanta not only covers the spread, but I think they win that game. And then moving on to Cleveland at Cincinnati, like I said earlier, Joe Burrow has never beaten the Browns, and I don't think that changes on the road here. The one thing you got to do to win road games in the NFL is run the ball well, and obviously that's something that Cleveland does. I know they're missing Kareem Hunt for this game and next, but they still have Nick Chubb. Baker Mayfield can still manage the game very well, and Cincinnati is a little bit smoke and mirrors. Their defense was overachieving by quite a bit, and that got exposed against the Jets with Mike White throwing for over 400 yards on them. I just don't think that Cincinnati quite has the firepower to keep up with Cleveland running the ball as well as they do, and Cleveland secondary is finally healthy, so maybe them being on the field for a second game in a row, they'll have a little bit more chemistry and they'll look a little bit better. I was just covering the Cleveland-Cincinnati game. I picked Atlanta against New Orleans.
Good. I'm glad we disagreed on a game there. I actually am with you on the Cleveland assessment, not only because Joe Burrow has not beaten the Browns yet in his career, but because of the other thing that you said, the way that the Browns run the ball so well. You're talking 2 weeks ago, they had a nobody running back come off the practice squad and run for 186 yards. So, yeah, give me Cleveland in this game, and it's got less to do with Joe Burrow and more to do with the Cincinnati defense. And I'm going Cleveland probably by 6 here, even though it's in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say Cleveland by a touchdown too, although the field goal is a possibility. Obviously, you know, Cincinnati just outright winning our game home is a possibility. But that's one I'm going to be tuning into. Like I said about Atlanta and New Orleans, division games tend to get a little wacky. So go ahead and give me Cleveland. I'd say I'm confidently going to say by a touchdown.
Okay.
Denver at Dallas, not much of a matchup here. Denver started out 3-0, and I think they've lost every game since.
They have.
Dallas started out 0-1 and has won every game since.
They have.
Dak Prescott announced that he is going to play. CeeDee Lamb rolled his ankle in practice on Wednesday. He's fine. Amari Cooper sounds like he's going to play. Michael Gallup sounds like they're going to be on the field. So they're locked and loaded. Go ahead and give me Dallas by 2 touchdowns here. I don't think that this game ends up close. I could potentially see some garbage time yards and points from Denver here, but that's all it's going to be is garbage time. So
actually my assessment here is a little bit different. It'll be a closer game because of the garbage time touchdowns. And if Dallas is up by 3 touchdowns, Dak Prescott does not come out in the fourth quarter. He's already dealing with the calf injury. They're going to let him come out and play because he says he's feeling good. And for what it's worth, Cooper Rush did a great job last week, or 2 weeks ago. We're gonna move past that though.
That was last week.
It was last week. You're right.
Against the Vikings.
It was last week against the Vikings. But again, Dallas, if they're up by 3 touchdowns going into the fourth quarter, Dak Prescott does not see another snap, and Denver does score some garbage time points. So I've got Dallas by 10 in this game, but the score is not going to represent how much of a blowout Dallas is going to put on Denver this time.
Let me get out ahead of this and say, no, Dallas fans, if you beat Denver at home, who's a bad team, it does not mean you are going to the Super Bowl. Next is the battle of two of the worst teams in the NFL, Houston at Miami. I want you to give your pick for this first because I guarantee you mine's different.
Tyrod Taylor starts this week.
Yep.
I've got the Houston Texans. Because I do not believe in Tua Tagovailoa. I've been talking about it for the last 7 or 8 months we've been doing this. I don't believe in Tua Tagovailoa. Devontae Parker just hit the IR, so he won't be playing this week. Will Fuller's already on the IR for Miami, so he's not playing this week. So give me the Tyrod Taylor-led Houston Texans against the Miami Dolphins by a field goal.
If this game was in Houston, I would have picked Houston, but Tua Tagovailoa, as low as we have definitely publicly been on him, is not the reason they're losing games in the last couple of weeks. He actually played pretty well. Tossed 4 touchdowns a couple of weeks ago to his 2 interceptions, but he's a young quarterback. He's figuring it out. They still have Jalen Waddle. You said the 2 receivers on the IR. Jalen Waddle's been the primary threat there anyway.
True, yeah.
Mike Gesicki has been out of his mind. Myles Gaskin has been coming into his own as a lead back finally. You know, he's getting the touches and he's producing with them. So go ahead and give me Miami here. But I'm actually expecting a shootout from 2 bad teams. So if you have either Brandon Cooks on your fantasy team, Myles Gaskin, I expect some big numbers because I expect, both these teams to score in the high 20s or the 30s even. Go ahead and give me Miami 34-31 though.
Okay. I also agree that it would be a shootout. The defenses are not going to show up, but I've got Houston 34-31.
So we got Vegas at the New York Giants next. You gave pick first last game. I'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and say Vegas, but I'm going to say by 10 points. Josh Jacobs is well and healthy now. Derek Carr's playing out of his mind, and the loss of Henry Ruggs, with his situation going on, shouldn't hurt this team too much. It just means more targets for Bryan Edwards and
Hunter Renfrow and
Darren Waller.
Waller, who's healthy, yes.
So, fun fact, Darren Waller had got 19 targets in the first game of the season, and he has not seen over 7 in a game since then. So, that's unusual for a tight end of his caliber. I believe that he sees, 10 targets in this game. I think he gets back on the scoreboard. Go ahead and give me Vegas by 10. I'm thinking 31-21.
I disagree. It's in New York. And I'm not usually saying the Meadowlands is a huge home win team situation. That's not what I'm saying by any means. The Giants have played tough in a lot of the games they've been in this year. Saquon Barkley is supposedly healthy enough to play this week. Oh, he is listed out. Okay. Then I changed my pick to the Vegas Raiders, and I'll sit with that. Thanks.
No Saquon Barkley. So he's had an interesting week too. So he was questionable, limited practice on Tuesday. Then he had a positive COVID test and was held out Wednesday and Thursday. And then they found out that was a false positive, and he was announced out today. So because of his ankle injury. So he's had an interesting up and down week. I guarantee you this is probably just precautionary. He could play if they were in playoff contention if this was against a team that they needed to win. However, not a divisional game, not a conference game. So I think he'll go ahead and sit this one out.
Okay.
Next matchup, Minnesota at Baltimore. Who do you think?
So I got Baltimore. It's in Baltimore, and Baltimore is clearly the better team on paper here. Every team is struggling to contain Lamar Jackson right now. Even in the games that they lose, they're putting up 35 points. So I'm going Baltimore here, and I don't really even think it maintains a close status. I think you're probably looking 35-21 score Baltimore, Minnesota.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook's been struggling a little bit. Justin Jefferson hasn't been as involved. Minnesota's defense, is going to look like Swiss cheese against the Baltimore ground game. But go ahead and I'm going to say another 10-point victory, 34-24, somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay. The Vikings offense can be lethal. They just haven't put it all together yet in one game. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Do you see the difference?
Wow. So we actually have this up on CBSSports.com, and the Cleveland-Cincinnati game has tickets starting at $160. And the Houston-Miami game has tickets starting at a whopping $11.50.
So if you want to go to Miami and watch a game, $11.
Yeah, pull out a $20 bill. It might cover parking too. Who knows? Moving on, New England at Carolina. I actually like this game. I think if it was in Foxborough, it'd be a little bit different. But I think this game ends up closer with a potential, home team upset, so to speak. However, this game all depends on one person. Christian McCaffrey.
He's not playing. He's been labeled out.
Has he been labeled out?
He was listed out. I just got the update on my phone.
Okay, so
Christian McCaffrey's out this week, and as such, Ryan's going to switch his pick to New England.
Go ahead and give me New England, and that's all we got to say about that.
Yes. So obviously things can change, but usually when you're labeled out on a Friday night, you don't come back and play on Sunday. So I've got New England as well. Bill Belichick also has put together some really strong games in the last couple of weeks. He goes to Dallas. He almost beats the Cowboys. He goes to the Chargers. He does beat the Chargers. And you can't take away what Mac Jones is doing. He's managing the game correctly. He's a very young quarterback. He's making some mistakes, but overall he's playing very well.
Looks a lot like Tom Brady did early in his career.
100%.
Early in his career.
Yes, early in his career.
I'm not saying he's going to be Tom Brady.
So apparently the update that I got is incorrect. I just got another one that says they're making the decision on Christian McCaffrey tomorrow. If McCaffrey plays, I'm going Carolina, but without McCaffrey, I'm going New England.
Even on a snap count, because he's too electrifying. If I had to pick,
he's a human cheat code.
If I had to pick one player in the NFL, if every player was completely healthy that would change a game dynamically, it's Christian McCaffrey.
Think Tecmo Bowl Bo Jackson. That's what we're talking about with Christian McCaffrey.
Think Madden 2004 Michael Vick.
That's what we're talking about. All right.
Yeah. So speaking of the Chargers, we're going to go ahead. Chargers at Philadelphia. I got the road team winning by 3 here. And I only say 3 because the Chargers defense has been very suspect when it comes to defending the run. And I say the Chargers win because we don't know if Nick Sirianni is actually going to uphold his 46, rushing attempt ground attack that he had last week.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at. If even with Miles Sanders out, if Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, and Jordan Howard can all get 10-plus carries each, the Eagles win this football game.
And Jalen Hurts can run himself, too.
And Jalen Hurts runs 7 to 10 times himself. The Eagles can win this football game. Very manageable. You manage the clock. You keep Justin Herbert off the field. The Eagles 100% can win this game tomorrow, or on Sunday, rather, if Nick Sirianni sticks with the run. When they don't, I said that exactly the way I wanted to. When they don't, and Jalen Hurts is forced to throw the football, the Chargers do win. I think it's probably a 7-point game, but only because of a garbage time touchdown for the Eagles.
I think the issue is Nick Sirianni is going to try and overthink this, and he's going to think, okay, the Chargers know they're bad at stopping the run. We just ran the ball 46 times. They're going to try and stop our run game, so we're going to go ahead and hit them through the air. Just something we're not good at doing.
Which is Jalen Hurts is not that kind of quarterback. You want him to throw 14 to 21 times a game, that is his sweet spot. I'm cool with him throwing 14 to 21 times a game. You start making him throw 25, 30, 35 times a game, and the Eagles are
I'll take 25 max.
25 max. I would go with 25 max. 85% of the time when Jalen Hurts is forced to throw the ball 30 times, the Eagles are going to lose this football game. Until he shows me differently, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and I think we're in agreement there. If they run the ball a lot, Philly will win. If they don't, they won't, and I don't think they do. So go ahead and give me the Chargers by 3. Next game's actually interesting because it all depends on 2 players, more so one than the other. But Arizona and San Francisco. Arizona, Cliff Kingsbury came out today and said he is prepared to not have Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins on Sunday. So with that being said, and San Francisco actually announced Deebo Samuel out today, but George Kittle is coming back.
George Kittle is playing, yes.
So with the news, there, how do you think this game ends up?
San Francisco by 6. It's in San Francisco. If it was in Arizona, I'd say maybe the home team could sneak a win out, but I don't see it. Not with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins out. And if Cliff Kingsbury is saying he's prepared to do it, it sounds like it's happening, that they aren't playing. They haven't announced it yet, but it does sound like they're not playing. And even if Hopkins was on the field, I'm still, without Kyler Murray, leaning towards San Francisco here. So yeah, give me San Francisco 6 points in like a 17 to 23 game type situation, like one of those.
Yeah, San Francisco runs the ball a lot, which means a lot of time of possession, doesn't necessarily relate to a lot of points. But Elijah Mitchell should be out on the field, and he's shown a lot, 6th-round pick, and they drafted Trey Sermon in the 3rd round. They traded up to draft Trey Sermon, and he's not even a part of the offense.
Hasn't seen the field that much. Yeah.
Brandon Ayuk and Trey Sermon are two players, 2 very young players that were expected to be a big part of this offense, and they just are not. And
we have to discuss the Brandon Ayuk situation.
Yeah, Deebo Samuel's come and played out of his mind, and maybe with this injury, Ayuk makes more of a statement. But
so when we came into the season, Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan was talking about how much he loved Brandon Ayuk and how he was excited to see him against the competition. Then after only week 2 of the season, Shanahan said, well, he's going to have to earn his playing time because he's not showing me anything. To put it in perspective, you're talking a receiver that had the whole field in front of him and did not capitalize on it. And as a result, his coach did the right thing and put him in the doghouse.
First-round pick.
Put him in the doghouse.
And that just goes to show you the way of the NFL. It's what have you done for me lately? Not what is your potential to do, not what did you do for me in the past, what have you done lately? And in just one short game, Ayuk was thrown to the doghouse. Now, like I said, there's potential for him to get back into it. I know George Kittle coming back. He might be on a snap count, so we'll see what the George Kittle situation is. But Brandon Ayuk has a chance this week. If he does not capitalize, I would not be surprised if he's not a 49er going into next season.
I wouldn't be surprised either. The last 425 game, it's America's game of the week. You got the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the 7-1 Green Bay Packers, the Aaron Rodgers-less 7-1 Green Bay Packers. And as a result of what I just said, give me the Chiefs here and give me the Chiefs by 10.
Give me the Chiefs either way. Score would change. I think 14 is a solid amount. I think the Chiefs have something to prove, so I don't think they're going to hold anything back. I don't think they're going to bench Patrick Mahomes in the fourth quarter if they're up by 3 touchdowns. I think that they're coming out to make a statement against the number 1 seed in the NFC. And I think they do just that. So 14 to 17 points without Aaron Rodgers. I would have said by a field goal with him. So Kansas City here, there are too many weapons, such a future Hall of Fame coach in Andy Reid. There's just too much on the table for Kansas City to lose this game. So go ahead and give me Kansas City in this game.
All right, so we're in agreement, Kansas City.
Yep.
All right, Sunday Night Football. We got the 6-2 Tennessee Titans visiting the 6-1 7-1 Los Angeles Rams. So home field advantage would have mattered to me had Derrick Henry been playing. But since King Henry is out for the foreseeable future, and they're in LA for all the reasons I discussed about why they're probably going to go to the Super Bowl, and I think they might very potentially win the Super Bowl this year.
14. Rams win by 14.
I was thinking 17.
It's not going to be a close game.
Listen, the reason the Titans have been so good this year is because Derrick Henry can – when you run the ball, you burn clock. You keep the offense of the other team off the field. We don't know what McNichols is going to do. We don't know how good Peterson still is. His videos look good. That's nice. Jason Peters looked good in videos 2 years ago, and he was garbage. So
that was a direct quote said by Ryan Swift.
Ryan Swift. Hashtag Ryan Swift on that one, yeah. So without the ability to keep the Rams offense on the field, I'm going more than 2 touchdowns. Give me 17-point victory by the Rams here.
I'm going 31-17 here. If A.J. Brown plays, he's going to get the Jalen Ramsey shadow all day. Tennessee doesn't have any notable players that can slow down Cooper Kupp. They can't really stop the run. So I think Stafford has a field day. I think Henderson has a field day. I think the whole offense has a field day until the fourth quarter when they start burning the clock and with Sonny Michel. So go ahead and give me the Rams here. Big score, big gap, just not close. And I think this is the week that we were just talking about the Rams take over the number 1 seed because Arizona's probably going to lose if they don't have Kyler Murray.
There it is. And because the Packers also lose, we have them losing. The Rams take over the number 1 seed.
Yeah, so Monday night, Chicago at Pittsburgh. This is the game of how are these teams, have the records that they do. Chicago's 3-4, I believe, which is better than I thought they would be, which is still not good. But
yeah.
And then Pittsburgh is 4-3, which is definitely better than I thought they would be, and they will not be as good. However, I guess with schedules like this, it tends to be pretty easy. So go ahead and give me Pittsburgh in this game, 17-14, just because I don't trust Justin Fields all the way to win a football game just yet.
So Justin Fields has shown me absolutely nothing.
He showed me he can turn the ball over.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, that's true. Absolutely nothing positive. He used his escapability last week. Obviously, he put up a decent game against the Niners for 3 quarters. The Niners ended up prevailing because the Niners are a better team in that scenario. But overall, Justin Fields is just – he deserves an entire season where the offense is his and he's not running somebody else's game plan. So give me Pittsburgh and give me probably a 7 by touchdown. Give me Pittsburgh by touchdown.
I don't think I think the Chicago defense is good enough to keep it within a 3-point game. So I'm going to go ahead and say 17-14. Neither offense is really going to show out just as they've done all year. Justin Fields just had a 5-turnover game. What was it 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. So it's just so hard to judge him. And like I said last week, I don't give Matt Nagy credit for anything. But he may have been on to something with keeping Justin Fields on the bench for a year. Yeah. That's kind of this, what you're starting to see with Zach Wilson is maybe he would have been better off on the bench for a year. It seems to be the trend nowadays. It used to be just throw your rookie quarterbacks in there with your Peyton Mannings, your Ryan Leafs, back in that era.
Even your Carson Wentz's.
Yeah.
Even your Carson Wentz's.
Was that Sam Bradford trade more so made because they could sell Bradford high, or because they were that big on Carson Wentz?
The Vikings foolishly gave up a first-round pick for Sam Bradford. Yeah. There's no other conversation that needs to be had about that. Wentz was going to sit the bench.
Yeah.
But it's
opportunity arose. That's how Carson Wentz got a start, and he played fairly well for a rookie. So
yeah, I mean, he only turned the ball over
16 touchdowns, 14 interceptions.
Correct.
But anyway, so with that being said, those are our picks for Week 9. We have to get into this Odell Beckham situation a little bit before we shut down the show. As you know, some of you may have heard, Odell Beckham is on the chopping block. They finally came to an agreement that's waiting for the NFLPA to approve it, where Odell Beckham will be released Monday. They will cut off the last 2 years of his contract entirely, and they will nix some of the salary for this year. So that way, if a team signs him while he is on waivers, he is only owed $7.25 million.
Correct, but he's owed that money by the team that signs him after waivers.
Yes. So with that being said, I have a list of the waivers here, and Bill has an active list of teams that have the money right now to afford Odell Beckham at this point in time. So the first 5 teams in the waiver order are Detroit, Miami, Houston, Jacksonville, and the Jets.
All right, none of those teams are on my list of teams that have the opportunity to get him because of salary cap issues. Okay. The only teams in the NFL right now that have the opportunity with salary cap issues to sign him are the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're not a contention. They're not going to go get Odell Beckham Jr. The Philadelphia Eagles, who might sneak into the playoffs, but he's not going to help them. They need something better. Not better than Odell Beckham, like better at the quarterback position. The Denver Broncos, also, we already said, smoke shield, that 3-0 start, nothing for us.
And they have good wide receivers. Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy will be just fine.
Seattle Seahawks, Russell Wilson likely is not a Seahawk after this season. Beckham's not going to want to go there. I know he doesn't have a choice, but they're also not in contention anymore anyway, with that division being as good as it is. The Carolina Panthers, another smokescreen. Now, here's my intriguing pick, and this is why I waited so long to get to them, is the Los Angeles Chargers. They have Mike Williams, they have Keenan Allen, and after that, their list of targets for Justin Herbert is relatively thin.
Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton. It's a lot of guys that would be, no names if it weren't for Justin Herbert throwing them the ball. So
correct. So my pick for a team that could go find Odell Beckham Jr. off of the waiver wire, if they can. So they got to talk to his agent. They got to talk to Odell Beckham Jr. and find out if it's going to be a cancer, because he was a cancer in New York when they weren't playing well. He's a cancer in Cleveland when Baker's not giving him the football. You really need to find out if he's going to be the right fit for your team in LA, because you have a young quarterback in Justin Herbert. It's his second season. He's not playing bad. He's playing pretty well, actually. And do you bring a cancer in, if he's going to be a cancer, Odell Beckham Jr., because his upside may be good, or do you acknowledge that he's not right for your team and move past him, even though you're pretty desperate for a weapon right now?
I'm actually more intrigued by the team you listed before, the Chargers, and that's the Panthers, because Robbie Anderson has not played well at all this year. They just traded Dan Arnold to Jacksonville, so they got rid of their best tight end. Tommy Tremble's not bad. And having another weapon outside of DJ Moore with Christian McCaffrey, still being hurt, to help Sam Darnold in his development could be huge for that team. I know they just gave Robbie Anderson the contract extension, but could you imagine running out a wide receiver core with the potential of Anderson, OBJ, and DJ Moore with Christian McCaffrey in the backfield? That lethal team could be a lethal team depending on how Darnold plays.
So I actually hadn't thought about that, and that's a really good point. I don't see it. I think the Chargers probably a better overall choice because of the contention.
So the Carolina Panthers are actually right before the Los Angeles Chargers on the waiver order for the NFL this week. Carolina's at 19, the Chargers are at 20.
All right. So you heard it here first. We could potentially see an Odell Beckham Jr.
What other teams are on that list?
The only other teams on that list, they went away.
Okay.
The only other teams on that list were, I believe, the Jets and the Steelers.
Yeah, and the Steelers have, 2 good wide receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster's out for the year, but they want to stay young. There's no sense in going to get a veteran wide receiver when they're probably going to draft a new quarterback in the offseason. They're going to have to rebuild the offensive line. You don't want to go ahead and spend that salary cap space right now.
One more thing I want to touch on before we get off. It wasn't on the docket, neither was the Odell Beckham Jr. thing, is the Aaron Rodgers information. So you and I discussed at the beginning of the season, because DeAndre Hopkins came out and said he doesn't want a decision that he gets to make for his own personal body to affect the team. Aaron Rodgers apparently went and made the decision. He was asked in August if he had been vaccinated, and his response in the interview was, "I have been immunized." What we find out, because he tested positive for COVID the other day, is that he did some holistic medications with his personal doctor that considered him immunized. So now the NFL is facing a situation where they believe Aaron Rodgers lied to them. However, he in every interview has specifically stated, I've been immunized. He did not say I'm vaccinated. What's your take on this? That was my deep question.
Yeah. Well, it is an interesting take because when you start talking about, what people do with their own personal bodies, it becomes a very touchy subject.
Exactly, yeah.
And as Devontae Adams said, they asked him in his interview about Aaron Rodgers, and he basically said the same thing. It's like, if you want to ask Aaron about his vaccination status, go talk to him. Don't ask me about it. However, his choice of words there did protect him from, the vaccination versus the immunized. So he technically didn't do anything wrong. He believed he was immunized, but obviously not. However, he may have just cost his team the number 1 seed this weekend. So he's got to take that into consideration.
Well, the reason it's a big deal is because they're debating on whether suspending him for 14 days or not. So he could not only potentially miss this game, he could miss a follow-up 2 games.
That would get appealed, overturned easily because he never said he was vaccinated. He never technically lied to the NFL. So,
I agree with that.
They can go ahead and try it, but there's no grounds for it. So
okay. So you got anything else?
No, that's about it, man. It's been a good show.
Hey, listen, this has been awesome, and I want another huge shout out. Oh, right before we get off, can I have, because I know he's watching, Timmy, can I have my younger brother come in here with us real quick? Is that right? Everybody still watching?
Only for a couple minutes. That way nobody runs away.
Not even. It's only going to be like 1 second. You come kneel down next to us, big guy. So this guy right here is my younger brother.
I hate kneeling down.
He's decent. I guess. I don't know. Somebody finally decided to marry him. Good for him. But no, seriously, if it wasn't for Timmy this weekend, Ryan and I wouldn't have had this awesome show together. So Timmy, thank you. Timmy, congratulations. And we're going to have a blast tomorrow at your wedding. There'll be some photos. I might post them on BSing.
Pick a Super Bowl winner right now.
Rams.
You heard it here first, fans.
Get Kenny in
Rams. Let me get my other brother who did this whole technical thing for us in here.
Yeah, we're going ahead giving shout outs.
Yes,
while we're waiting for Kenny to get in here, shout out to Talking 215. Jake Biasato runs a great podcast over there. Go check him out. He's been one of our biggest supporters. Also, Frankie Steskel from Flyers Nitty Gritty. He also has his own solo show, Frank the Tank. Go ahead, check them out as well. He's been one of our biggest supporters as well. But who made this all possible today?
It's my brother, Ken Brandt. He's the second Ken, in the house right now because my old man's upstairs. But without him, this wonderful green screen banner behind us, that's actually our sports logo for those of you who don't recognize it based on just the sports stuff that's there. Kenny did all that on a camera and everything wired in his house in a green room, which is just absolutely amazing. So we want to thank Kenny again for letting us do the show here in his basement. Literally couldn't have done it without you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And on that note, thank you very much for joining us again on BSing Sports. We're on week several at this point, and we're having a blast. Hopefully,
just a couple. We've been around for just a couple weeks.
Hopefully, Ryan and I can get to. We live a little closer to each other now. He's no longer in New Mexico, so we're going to try and make it like a once a month situation where we run into each other and try to do a live show. And that'll be awesome. So thanks again for tuning in, and have a good weekend.
And go Birds.
Go, Ken. You're good.